Actually, I grew up in the city and I went to Catholic schools because my parents decided that that was where I should go. All of us went to Catholic schools. And then I went to Towson University. I worked in the night and went to college in the daytime. And then when I went to law school, I went at night, so I flipped it. I went to law school at night and worked in the daytime. Towson was great, and I still love Towson. I went back and spoke to the kids there for political persuasion class about a month ago and had my same professor, he's still there. And University of Baltimore was really wonderful because I got to go to school with police officers, firefighters, nurses. We were all in night school going through, working and juggling all of that. So I'm definitely a multitasker. Yeah. And my last semester of law school, I had our first of 4 kids, Grace O'Malley. So that was kind of fun. The last semester, I think I had Grace in February and I graduated in May. And then took the bar in July and passed, thank goodness, and started prosecuting cases in Baltimore County. Yeah, I loved law school. I really loved especially being a night student, being with other people who were doing it because we really cared and wanted to learn about the law and how the law can really help people. And I always wanted to be a lawyer, I guess since around the age of 10. My dad's a lawyer, and so I used to watch him in court. I would go to court with him sometimes. He was also in the General Assembly. I'd watch him in the General Assembly, and he really was a mentor to me and my brother, who was also a lawyer. Oh, I worked, like I said, in the state's attorney's office in their criminal investigations division, working with narcotics cases. And so I was the law clerk in that division for 3 years, and I went to court every day watching great lawyers, really, really good lawyers, and good judges. I mean, there was Judge Joe Murphy, who taught me evidence, and he's part of the Court of Appeals. He's retired now, but there was Judge Smith, who became the county executive. There was Patty Pytash. There were great women leaders in my office. I had Ambrose, who was phenomenal. Sandy O'Connor was the state's attorney, and a lot of really great people to watch and watch their trial skills, and I loved it. I mean, I was just fascinated with trial advocacy and being in courtrooms and watching them try cases before juries. So staying there as a law clerk for 3 years, and then I passed the bar and they offered me a position. I went to work right away. And if you're really dealing, as a trial lawyer, trying hundreds of cases in front of judges and juries, how to relate to people and how to help people, whether it's the victims, certainly, because that's your job as a prosecutor, but also the defendants in coming up with solutions, not just making sentencing recommendations that are put this person in jail, but really looking at what's happening here and let's solve these problems so they don't come back to the court system again or they don't victimize anyone in the future, and balancing those types of interests. Sometimes you had to be tenacious, and when we're dealing with homicide cases, child abuse cases, domestic violence, so many domestic violence cases. But it was all about really trying to find solutions to keep people safe, and doing that for 10 years was really one of my favorite jobs. And I left that office as head of their white collar crime unit. And a lot of the victims in those cases were seniors, because there were so many types of, back then, so many bad actors trying to go after seniors with their financial exploitation, avenues, whether it was sweepstakes or trying to get them to refinance their mortgages, and really awful scams. And so now it's gotten worse. We've all seen with the internet, all these cybersecurity issues, and even with just the telephone, you probably receive 10 phone calls a month from someone who's trying to rip you off and tell you that you didn't pay your energy bill or something. And so those are areas that I cared deeply about. Well, I really felt very passionately about the issue of intimate partner violence, because the judges who I was practicing in front of, not all of them, like I said, there was plenty of great ones, some of them re-victimized victims when they would come into the court system by blaming them for staying in a relationship. So if I was able to get the conviction, or if the person pled guilty, the sentencing all turned on to the victim. And these judges were saying, well, why are you putting your children through this? Why are you staying in this relationship? Why don't you like yourself? I mean, really awful questions which would keep someone from never wanting to come back to the courts again for help. And so when I became a judge, it was an issue that I cared very dearly about. I was able. The job that I'm running for the Attorney General of the state of Maryland, is one of the most important positions that we have in state government. And to me, it's about the rule of law And that's what I've done for the past 30 years. I've worked with the law and the rule of law and being fair and just. And I just found that it's just such an important role that it needs somebody who has the experience that I've had for the past 30 years, who can really, again, not the rule of politics, but the rule of law in guiding these 460 some lawyers that are going in and out of courtrooms from the district court to the Supreme Court. You really need to have a leader that's been there and can, I've worked with investigators, with defense attorneys, with witnesses, with victims. And when you're talking about leading an office of people who do just that, you want a leader that's been there. I think it's really, really important that you have those skills, especially when you're talking about being the Attorney General. I mean, it's like saying you want a principal that's never tried in a class, never had a classroom to teach. You want someone who's been in the field, working with people and advocating, and not just making laws, but using the laws and interpreting them, and understands how to advocate and how to argue cases, and when you should and when you shouldn't go to trial. I mean, all these are really sort of intuitive skills that you learn from years and years of being in a courtroom. It's a desire to see things get better. After the pandemic, things just fell apart when it came to the services that we provide for Marylanders. The mental health services right now are just, if you have money, you can probably find a therapist. If you don't have enough money, you probably can't. And the schools need therapists. We have so many issues with violence and even violence in the schools. I mean, it's a desire to fix things, if you will, because I sat in the courtroom and I was seeing just the level of advocacy on both sides just kind of fall apart, and people just felt hopeless. And I thought to myself, first of all, and first and foremost, the Attorney General, again, is one of the most important jobs, but I just couldn't see it going to just another politician, but somebody who really cares about leading that office forward through these really, really tough times that we have when it comes to consumer protection, when it comes to our environment, when it comes to public safety. These are areas that the Attorney General's office has a huge, huge impact on, and I want to be there to lead them. So policing in America, we've all seen so many tragedies that have affected our Black and brown communities, and a lot of it's because we don't have open transparency when it comes to policing and accountability. I mean, when I was a sitting judge, I had found, after a long trial, 2 police officers had lied under oath. And I reported it immediately. I put it on the record, which you don't do lightly as a judge, because you're going to ruin this person's career, or you would think there would be some due process for those 2 officers that then go through, and that I would have to be a witness or something. I reported it immediately to the Baltimore City Police Department, and nothing happened. So can you imagine if you are just not a judge? I was a judge, and I think maybe my husband was governor at the time. But here I am calling and professionally reporting these 2 officers and saying that they lied under oath, and nothing was done about it until 2 years later. I think they got involved in another sort of mess, and we had some reporting on it. Jane Miller did some reporting on it. But there has to be accountability and transparency. So the sheriff's wrong. He can certainly discipline an officer, and should and must. And body-worn cameras are doing a great thing as well when it comes to transparency. But if police aren't held accountable right away, swiftly, when they do something wrong, then the community, everybody loses faith. And Anton's Law was a great push with the legislative session in 2021 to do just that with a variety of ways. They addressed the no-knock bench warrants and reformed that to some extent. The other thing that the law did was gave the Attorney General's office the Independent Investigations Division, which gets to investigate any civilian death that's a result of police activity. So whether it's a car crash, whether it's a physical confrontation or a shooting, all of that goes straight to the AG's office. And now, I don't know if it passed, I'll have to see what happened as of yesterday, the Attorney General's office is going to be given the ability to prosecute those cases if in fact the evidence shows that the police officer or officers violated the law and caused the death of a civilian. So, and I think that's the best way to handle it, but the state's attorneys associations and the sheriffs all look at it as though, this is somehow stepping on their toes. But we really have to take the police from policing themselves. We have to take them out of the picture. We need to have transparency and accountability and do an independent investigation if, sadly, and there will be, future civilian deaths as a result of police activity. And 90% of the police men and women that put their uniform on every day to protect us, I know because I've worked with them for years, are good, upstanding police officers, and they want to do their job for the same reasons I want to do my job. They're very committed, and they don't like it when there's someone not obeying the law, and there's someone on the take, or there's someone breaking the laws. You know, you talk to them, and they're very passionate about that. They want to see accountability and transparency because everybody wants to play by the rules, except there are a few bad actors. There's a case now in the federal courts where it's just amazing. The one witness who testified, he's getting immunity from the federal courts, but he will go to jail. The police officer, many, many years, talked about stealing thousands and thousands of dollars, planting guns, doing all kinds of really bad things, and he wasn't the only one. Well, the job of Attorney General isn't just a legislator, right? You're not just advocating for laws. You're not just lobbying the legislature for good legislation for the state. That's a part of it, but the Attorney General is a trial lawyer and should be. I mean, the past 4 Attorney Generals have all had extensive trial experience. My father, Joe Curran, tried cases for 25 years before he became the Attorney General. It's really important, not that you've just made laws, but you've used them. You're an advocate, you're going to court, you're arguing before juries. And in the primary, my opponent, I can't remember the last time he was in a Maryland courtroom. I think it was probably in the early 2000s, but maybe a handful of times compared to, because he's been asked the question. It just hasn't been. And I think that's a real handicap. You know, you want someone with the experience not only to lead these lawyers, but I'm going to go to court also. I will be arguing cases in the circuit court or the district court, wherever, you know, when the issues are important enough to our Marylanders. And I want to follow in the model of my dad, actually, who did that. He went to the Supreme Court twice and had 2 for 0. He won both of those cases. Well, I really, really, really want to start working on ways that we can do more enforcement when it comes to the environment, because we can't wait another day. I mean, climate change has already taken such a strong effect on all of the communities across our state and our country. You know, I tell this story. When I was a kid, I was scared to death of the Wizard of Oz because of tornadoes, and my parents would say, don't worry about it, they don't happen here, but now they do. And they happen all over the country. And we had, you know, historic flooding in Ellicott City 2 years in a row, and we've got 3,100 square miles of shoreline here in our state, and we are really, really affected by sea level rise. So I think making sure that we have all the tools, and if we don't have them, going to the legislature to get them. This year, the General Assembly tried really hard to get some significant laws passed, but they fell a little bit short. The environmentalists didn't think that we were getting enough passed. I know that, I think it was Delegate Ruth and Delegate Terrassa tried to get passed a bill that would give the Attorney General the ability to sue fossil fuel companies if we can show a causation to climate change as a result of their business practices. And I think that's a good step forward. I'm hoping that they'll present that again, and if I'm the Attorney General, I will be the lead sponsor of it to argue that we need to do more than just saying it's just the way it is. I think people